The rejected dog wandered aimlessly until a police officer knelt before him. And what happened moved everyone. The rain fell in sheets across the dingy alleyways of South Brooklyn, turning the already dismal April evening into a waterlogged maze of glistening concrete and overflowing gutters. Officer Michael Reeves guided his patrol car slowly through the deluge, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. His 12-hour shift was finally winding down, and all he could think about was the leftover lasagna waiting in his refrigerator and the warm comfort of his apartment. The dispatch radio crackled to life. All units in the vicinity of Gowanus, we've got reports of a disturbance at the abandoned warehouse on 3rd Street. Possible break-in. Michael sighed, reaching for the receiver. Dispatch, this is Officer Reeves. I'm 3 blocks away. I'll check it out. Copy that, Officer Reeves. Backup is 20 minutes out due to flooding on Atlantic. Great, just great. 20 minutes in this weather meant he was essentially on his own. The warehouse in question was a notorious shelter for addicts and the homeless seeking refuge from the elements. Usually, Michael wouldn't mind. People needed somewhere to stay dry. But disturbance calls sometimes meant violence or overdoses that couldn't wait for backup. He pulled up to the dilapidated building, its brick facade covered in decades of grime and graffiti. The entrance, once secured with a heavy chain, now gaped open like a missing tooth in a broken smile. Michael grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the torrent, instantly feeling the rain penetrate his uniform despite the department-issued raincoat. The smell hit him first as he entered: mildew, urine, and the distinctive odor of human desperation. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing scattered debris and remnants of temporary shelters. "Police, anyone here?" His voice echoed through the cavernous space, receiving no immediate reply except the rhythmic dripping of water from the leaking roof. A crash from the far corner sent his hand instinctively to his holster. "Police! Come out with your hands where I can see them." Michael advanced cautiously, his flashlight illuminating the source of the noise: a toppled stack of wooden pallets. Behind them, a pair of eyes reflected the light back at him. Not human eyes, animal eyes. "Hey there," Michael softened his voice, crouching down slowly. The creature growled, a low, warning rumble that conveyed both fear and threat. As Michael adjusted his flashlight, the beam revealed a dog, or what was left of one. The animal was severely emaciated, its ribs protruding sharply against matted fur darkened with dirt and what looked like dried blood. One ear was partially missing, and a fresh gash ran across its shoulder, still seeping. Despite its condition, there was something in the dog's steady gaze that gave Michael pause. It wasn't lunging or retreating deeper into the shadows. It simply watched him, as if assessing. "It's okay, buddy. I'm not here to hurt you." Michael slowly reached into his pocket, retrieving half a protein bar he'd forgotten about from earlier in his shift. He unwrapped it and placed it on the ground, then slid it forward with his foot. The dog's eyes followed the offering but made no move toward it. Instead, another growl emanated from its throat. "Suit yourself." Michael straightened up and continued his search of the building. The place was empty of people, though evidence of recent occupation was everywhere: discarded needles, makeshift bedding, empty food containers. The reported disturbance was probably just the sound of the dog knocking over those pallets. He called it in. "Dispatch, Officer Reeves. Building appears clear. Just a stray dog inside. No sign of break-in or criminal activity." "Copy that, officer. Return to patrol." Michael turned to leave but found himself hesitating at the doorway. The rain had intensified and the temperature was dropping. The forecast called for near-freezing conditions overnight. He looked back into the darkness where the dog remained. Something wasn't sitting right. That wasn't just any stray. The injuries, the extreme malnourishment. This was an animal that had suffered abuse, not merely neglect, and yet it hadn't attacked him when it had the chance. Against his better judgment, Michael walked back to where the dog was hiding. "Listen, pal, you can't stay here. Animal control will be making rounds tomorrow, and with those injuries, they'll likely put you down." He wasn't sure why he was talking to the dog as if it could understand him, but it felt right somehow. "I can take you to a shelter. They might be able to help." The dog's eyes remained fixed on him, unblinking, intelligent. 20 minutes later, Michael found himself outside the South Brooklyn Animal Rescue Center, the dog wrapped in an old blanket he kept in his trunk, cradled awkwardly in his arms. The animal had allowed itself to be approached and picked up with surprising compliance, though it remained rigid in his grasp. The overnight attendant, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, greeted him with practiced neutrality. "Officer, what have you got there?" "Found him in an abandoned warehouse. He's injured, probably been abused." She peered at the bundle in his arms, then grimaced. "Oh, that's a pit bull mix. Or some kind of fighting breed. Look at those scars. He's definitely been in the ring." The dog chose that moment to emit a low growl. The attendant stepped back. "I'm sorry, officer, but we're at capacity for aggressive breeds. And with those injuries, the likelihood of adoption is virtually zero. You'd be better off calling animal control." "He's not aggressive," Michael protested. "He's hurt and scared. He needs medical attention." "Then I suggest the emergency vet clinic on 4th. Though fair warning, treatment for an animal in this condition won't be cheap, and they'll still recommend euthanasia if he shows any aggression." Michael looked down at the dog, feeling its ribs beneath his fingers, seeing the way it watched him with those intent eyes. There was something there, something beyond the pain and fear. A dignity, perhaps. An intelligence. "Thanks anyway," he said, turning to leave. Back in his patrol car, Michael sat with the engine running, the heater finally warming the interior. The dog lay on the passenger seat, still wrapped in the blanket, still watching him. "What now, buddy?" he asked aloud. His phone buzzed, a text from his girlfriend, Allison. "Working late, don't wait up, XO." It wasn't unusual. Allison's job as an ER nurse meant irregular hours and last-minute schedule changes. It also meant their small apartment was often empty, something Michael had never particularly minded before. But tonight, the thought of returning to an empty home felt somehow more desolate than usual. He glanced at the dog. "Guess it's just you and me for now." The emergency vet clinic was brightly lit against the dark, rainy night. The receptionist's eyes widened as Michael entered with his burden. "Oh my, what happened here?" "Found him abandoned. He needs help." The vet, Dr. Patel, a young woman with kind eyes and efficient hands, examined the dog carefully. "He's severely malnourished, dehydrated, and has multiple wounds, some old, some fresh. There's evidence of previous broken bones that healed improperly." She looked up at Michael. "This dog has been through hell, officer. Can you help him?" "I can treat his immediate injuries, get him on fluids and antibiotics, but recovery will be long, and given his breed and condition..." She let the sentence hang. "What do you mean?" "Finding a home for him will be nearly impossible. Fighting dogs, even suspected fighting dogs, carry a stigma. Most shelters won't take them due to liability concerns, and those that do rarely find them homes." Michael looked at the dog, now sedated on the examination table. Even in unconsciousness, there was tension in its body, as if it could never fully relax. "What would you do?" he asked quietly. Dr. Patel's expression softened. "If it were up to me, I'd give him a chance. There's something special about this one. Despite everything, he hasn't given up. You can see it in his eyes." Michael nodded. He had seen it too. That spark. that something indefinable that had made him unable to walk away. "Let's do this," he said, pulling out his credit card. "Whatever he needs." 3 hours and a significant financial investment later, Michael carried the still drowsy dog up the 3 flights of stairs to his apartment. The animal was cleaner now, its wounds dressed, with instructions for care and a bag of medications that would hopefully start the healing process. As he placed the dog gently on a makeshift bed of blankets in the corner of his living room, Michael wondered what exactly he thought he was doing. He had no experience with dogs, especially not one with such a traumatic past. His work schedule was demanding, his apartment was small, and Allison had never expressed any interest in pets. Yet somehow, as he watched the dog slowly curl into itself on the blankets, eyes still watching him even as exhaustion pulled at its consciousness, Michael felt a certainty that he had made the right choice. "You need a name," he said softly. "Something strong." The dog's ears, one whole, one partially missing, twitched slightly. "How about Chance? Because that's what we're taking here, buddy. A chance." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the day, while inside, man and dog regarded each other across a divide that seemed somehow less vast than it had hours before. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting stripes of gold across Michael's living room floor. He blinked awake on the couch, momentarily disoriented until the events of the previous night came flooding back. The dog, Chance, had remained in his makeshift bed all night, hardly moving except to lift his head whenever Michael stirred. Now, in the clarity of daylight, Michael could better assess what he'd gotten himself into. Chance looked even more pitiful than he'd appeared in the dimness of the warehouse. Clean now, the extent of his scarring was fully visible, a roadmap of past cruelties etched into his skin. The dog's body was primarily a washed-out brown, with patches of white on his chest and one paw, but scars had left portions of his coat permanently gone, revealing pink skin beneath. "Morning, buddy," Michael said softly. Chance's eyes opened immediately, alert and watchful. "Let's get you some breakfast." Following Dr. Patel's instructions, Michael prepared a small amount of the special recovery food she'd provided. He placed the bowl a few feet from Chance, then retreated to give him space. The dog didn't move. "It's okay. It's for you." Still nothing. Michael frowned. He hadn't considered that Chance might not know how to eat from a bowl or might associate food with some kind of trauma. He picked up a small piece of the soft food and held it out in his palm. Chance watched him warily. "Come on, buddy. You need to eat to get better." After what seemed like an eternity, Chance slowly, painfully rose to his feet. Each movement appeared to cost him considerable effort, his joints stiff and his injured shoulder clearly causing discomfort. He took 3 cautious steps toward Michael, then stopped, eyes darting between the food and Michael's face. Michael remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. He'd had virtually no experience with dogs, but he sensed that this moment was significant, a test of trust. Finally, with utmost caution, Chance extended his neck and delicately took the food from Michael's hand. He retreated immediately to his blankets to eat it, turning his body slightly away as if to protect his prize. "Good boy," Michael said quietly. "We'll work on the bowl later." The sharp buzz of his phone interrupted the moment. Allison's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," he answered, suddenly aware of how he was going to explain the presence of a half-dead fighting dog in their apartment. "Hey yourself. Just got off shift. Why aren't you at work?" Allison's voice carried the particular mixture of exhaustion and edginess that followed her overnight rotations. "Took a personal day. Listen, Allie, something happened last night. Are you okay?" Immediate concern replaced the tiredness in her voice. "I'm fine, but I found this dog." "A dog? What are you talking about?" Michael took a deep breath. I responded to a call at that old warehouse on 3rd. There was this dog there, Ali. He's been abused, probably used for fighting. He needed help and the shelter wouldn't take him, so... The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. So I brought him home, Michael finished. You brought a fighting dog into our apartment. It wasn't a question. He's not dangerous. He's hurt and scared. Michael, those dogs are bred and trained to be aggressive. They're not pets. You can't just... I couldn't leave him there, Michael interrupted. You'd have done the same thing if you'd seen him. Another extended silence. We'll talk about this when I get home, Allison finally said. I'm too tired to deal with it now. The call ended, leaving Michael staring at his phone. He knew Allison wasn't being unreasonable. Bringing home a dog, any dog, without discussion was a big step. Bringing home a dog with Chance's background was potentially irresponsible. But standing in that vet clinic, watching the gentle way Dr. Patel had treated Chance despite his fearsome appearance, Michael had felt certain he was making the right choice. He looked over at Chance, who had finished the morsel of food and was watching him again with those steady eyes. We've got about 3 hours to make you look a little less threatening, Michael told him. Though I'm not sure that's possible, pal. The next few hours were spent slowly coaxing Chance to eat the rest of his breakfast from the bowl and attempting to administer the various medications Dr. Patel had prescribed. The antibiotics proved especially challenging until Michael discovered that wrapping them in a tiny bit of cheese worked wonders. Chance took each treated piece with the same gentle precision he'd shown earlier, careful never to touch Michael's fingers with his teeth. When Allison's key turned in the lock just after noon, Michael was sitting on the floor near Chance's blankets, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough to establish familiarity. The door opened, and Allison stepped inside, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes immediately found Chance in the corner. "Oh my God, Michael." Her hand flew to her mouth. "He looks like he's been through a war." "He has, in a way," Michael said quietly, getting to his feet. Allison approached cautiously, her medical training evident in the way she assessed Chance's visible injuries. His shoulder. That's a fresh wound. Probably from whatever happened at the warehouse last night. Dr. Patel cleaned and dressed it. "You took him to a vet? That must have cost..." "It was worth it." Allison's expression softened slightly. She'd never been able to stay angry with Michael for long, especially when his inherent goodness shone through his sometimes gruff exterior. It was what had drawn her to him in the first place, the contrast between the tough cop and the gentle man beneath. "Has he shown any aggression?" she asked, setting down her bag and kneeling at a safe distance. "Not toward me." He growled at the shelter worker, but she was less than sympathetic. Allison studied Chance, her nurse's eyes cataloging each visible wound and sign of neglect. "He's severely malnourished. How old did the vet think he is?" "Around 2, maybe 3. Hard to tell with everything he's been through." Chance watched their exchange with intense focus, his eyes moving from Michael to Allison and back again, as if trying to understand the dynamics at play. "What's your plan here, Michael?" Allison asked finally, turning to face him. "Are you thinking of keeping him?" Michael hesitated. He hadn't thought that far ahead. His impulse last night had been simply to save Chance from euthanasia. The longer-term implications hadn't factored into his decision. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just knew I couldn't leave him there." Allison's sigh was soft but resigned. "We don't know anything about him. What he's been through, what triggers he might have. Fighting dogs are trained to be weapons, Michael." "He's not just a fighting dog," Michael insisted. There's something else there. Something. I can't explain it. But I saw it last night in the warehouse. He could have attacked me, but he didn't. He assessed the situation. He made a choice. Dogs don't make choices like that. This one did. Their discussion was interrupted by movement. Chance was attempting to stand again, his legs shaking with the effort. Once upright, he tentatively took a step toward them, or more specifically, toward Allison. Both humans froze. Chance took another step, then another, his movement labored but deliberate. He stopped about 2 feet from Allison, his eyes locked with hers. Then, slowly, he lowered himself back to the floor, his body language submissive but not fearful. "He wants you to know he's not a threat," Michael said softly, amazed by the display. Allison's professional reserve cracked slightly. "That's remarkable behavior for an abused animal." She extended her hand, palm down, fingers curled loosely. The proper way to let a dog sniff you. Chance stretched his neck forward just enough to catch her scent, then retreated back to his position. "He's being very careful," she observed, "setting boundaries." "Smart boy," Michael said. Allison's expression was thoughtful as she stood. "I'm not saying yes to keeping him permanently, but I understand why you couldn't leave him." It wasn't full approval, but it was enough for now. Michael knew Allison well enough to recognize when she was softening to an idea. "Thank you," he said simply. "He'll need consistent care during his recovery. Special feeding schedules, medication management, it's not going to be easy." "I know, I'm prepared for that." Allison gave him a tired smile. "You always did have a soft spot for the ones nobody else wanted." She touched his arm gently. "I'm going to shower and get some sleep. We'll talk more later." As Allison disappeared into the bedroom, Michael looked back at Chance, who had returned to his blankets but remained alert, watching the apartment door as if standing guard despite his weakened state. "First hurdle cleared, buddy," Michael murmured. "Baby steps." The next 2 weeks settled into a routine of sorts. Michael arranged his shifts to allow maximum time at home, and Allison surprised him by doing the same. Chance's physical recovery was slow but steady, each day bringing small improvements that Dr. Patel confirmed at their weekly checkups. "His blood work is looking much better," she told them during their latest visit. "The antibiotics have cleared the infection, and the wound on his shoulder is healing nicely. He's still underweight, but he's gaining steadily." "What about the behavioral assessment?" Michael asked, his hand resting lightly on Chance's back as the dog sat patiently on the examination table. Dr. Patel smiled. "That's actually the most impressive part. Despite his background, he's showing remarkable stability. No food aggression, no resource guarding, no inappropriate reactions to handling. It's almost as if..." "As if what?" Allison prompted. "As if he understands that you're helping him." Dr. Patel shook her head. "I know that sounds anthropomorphic, but I've treated hundreds of rescue dogs, including former fighting dogs. They usually require months of rehabilitation before reaching this level of trust." Michael nodded, unsurprised. He'd witnessed Chance's unusual intelligence daily. The way the dog observed everything, processed information, made decisions. His careful interactions with strangers, his alertness to the emotions of those around him. "So, what's the long-term prognosis?" Allison asked, her tone professional, but with an undercurrent of personal investment that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. "Physically, he'll likely always have some issues. Those old fractures mean he'll be prone to arthritis as he ages. The scarring on his face and body is permanent, but with proper nutrition and care, he could live a normal, healthy life." Dr. Patel looked directly at Michael. "The question is, what are your plans for him?" The question hung in the air. It was something Michael and Allison had carefully avoided discussing. focusing instead on Chance's immediate recovery needs. "We're still figuring that out," Michael answered finally. Dr. Patel nodded understandingly. "Well, whatever you decide, he's made remarkable progress in your care. Not every dog gets so lucky." As they drove home, Chance sat in the back seat, his posture more relaxed than it had been on previous journeys. He still didn't lie down. Michael had never seen him fully recline except on his blankets in the apartment, but his vigilance had softened around the edges. "We need to talk about it," Allison said quietly, looking out the passenger window. "I know. The apartment lease only allows pets under 30 pounds. He's already over that, and he'll gain more weight as he recovers." Michael nodded. It was one of many practical considerations they faced. Their building had a strict pet policy that Chance certainly didn't meet. Their schedules, while manageable for now, would eventually return to normal, meaning long hours with Chance alone. And there was the matter of his breed and history. Many places had breed restrictions against pit bulls, and finding a new apartment that would accept him would be challenging. "What are you thinking?" he asked, glancing at Allison. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the window. "I'm thinking, I've never seen you like this before. The way you are with him. It's like he's brought out something in you that was always there, just waiting." Michael hadn't expected that answer. "What do you mean?" "You've always been compassionate. It's why you became a cop, to help people. But with Chance, it's different. More intimate, I guess. Like you understand each other on some level I can't quite access." Her observation struck him as profoundly true. There was a connection with Chance that defied easy explanation, a mutual recognition of something shared. "And I've seen how he watches you," Allison continued. "How he positions himself in the apartment so he can always see you, how he checks your face when someone new enters the room, as if gauging whether they're safe by your reaction." She turned to face him. "It's extraordinary, Michael." "So you're saying—" "I'm saying I understand why you couldn't leave him in that warehouse. And I'm saying that finding a way to keep him might be worth the complications." Relief washed over Michael. He reached across the console and squeezed her hand. "Thank you." Chance made a soft sound from the back seat, drawing their attention. His head was tilted slightly, ears perked forward, as if he were following their conversation with keen interest. "Yes, we're talking about you," Allison said, a smile curving her lips. "Don't get a big head about it." That evening, as they sat in the living room, Michael and Allison on the couch, Chance on his now permanent blanket nest, they began researching their options. Allison had her laptop open, scrolling through listings for pet-friendly apartments, while Michael made calls to contacts who might help navigate the bureaucratic hurdles of reclassifying Chance as a service or support animal. "Here's one in Sunset Park," Allison said. 2-bedroom, allows large dogs, no breed restrictions mentioned." "What's the catch?" "It's $800 more than we're paying now." Michael winced. Between the vet bills and the extra time off work, their finances were already stretched thin. "Maybe we need to look further out," he suggested. "Bay Ridge or Bensonhurst. That would mean a longer commute for both of us." Allison closed her laptop with a sigh. "And honestly, I'm not sure any landlord is going to be thrilled about a pit bull with visible scars regardless of the neighborhood." Chance, sensing the shift in mood, rose from his blankets and cautiously approached the couch. In the weeks since his arrival, he'd gradually increased his comfort zone within the apartment, though he still maintained a certain reserve. To their surprise, he placed his front paws on the edge of the couch, the first time he'd attempted such familiarity, and looked at them with what could only be described as concern. "It's okay, buddy," Michael reassured him, carefully reaching out to stroke the top of his head. "We'll figure it out." Chance held his gaze for a long moment, then gently withdrew his paws and returned to his blankets. "Did you see that?" Allison whispered. "It's like he knew we were worried about him." Before Michael could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Martinez, his patrol partner. "Hey, Carlos, what's up?" "Mike, man, I just heard through the grapevine that the chief is looking to fill that K9 handler position that opened last month." Michael frowned. "Yeah, so?" "So word is he's having trouble finding someone qualified who actually wants it. Most of the guys with seniority don't want the extra training and responsibility." "Carlos, what are you getting at?" "I'm getting at the fact that you've been going on about this miracle dog you found, the one that's too smart for his own good. The position comes with a housing allowance, specifically for officers with K9 partners. No landlord restrictions because it's a police dog." Michael sat up straighter. "Chance isn't a police dog. He's a rescue with a traumatic past." "Maybe. But Ryan in K9 says the best police dogs often come from difficult backgrounds. Something about having seen the worst in people makes them better judges of character." Carlos paused. "Look, just think about it. Applications close next Friday." After hanging up, Michael relayed the conversation to Allison, who looked simultaneously hopeful and skeptical. "Could that even work? He's not a trained police dog." "No, but Carlos might have a point. Chance has incredible instincts. And if he could pass the temperament evaluations, the rest is training." Michael looked over at the dog, who was watching them with his usual attentive expression. "The question is, would it be fair to him, after everything he's been through, to put him in potentially dangerous situations?" Allison considered this. "Maybe you should let him decide." "What do you mean?" "Take him to the training facility. See how he responds to the environment, to the other dogs. If he shows stress or fear, you'll have your answer. But if he takes to it..." Michael nodded slowly. It was a reasonable approach, and it would give Chance agency in the decision, something that had been denied him in his previous life. "I'll call Ryan tomorrow," he decided. "See if we can arrange an informal evaluation." Later that night, as Allison slept, Michael sat on the floor beside Chance's blankets. The dog was awake, as he often was when Michael had late shifts, seemingly unwilling to fully rest until everyone was safely home. "What do you think, buddy?" Michael whispered. "Could you be a police dog? Help people the way they never helped you?" Chance's steady gaze held his, unflinching and somehow wise beyond his years. In that moment, Michael felt the strange certainty that had guided him since that rainy night in the warehouse, the sense that this wasn't just any dog, that their paths had crossed for a reason bigger than either of them yet understood. "We'll figure it out together," he promised, gently resting his hand on Chance's uninjured shoulder. "Whatever happens next, we face it as a team." The Brooklyn K9 Training Center occupied a renovated warehouse not unlike the one where Michael had found Chance. The irony wasn't lost on him as he guided the dog from his car toward the entrance. Chance moved with more confidence now, his gait steadier, though the slight favoring of his once-injured shoulder remained noticeable. "Officer Reeves?" A stocky man with salt and pepper hair approached, hand extended. "Ryan Donovan, K9 Unit Supervisor." Michael shook his hand. "Thanks for seeing us on such short notice. Carlos Martinez speaks highly of you." Ryan's attention shifted to Chance, his expert eyes assessing the dog with professional interest. "And this is your rescue?" "This is Chance." Ryan crouched down, maintaining a respectful distance. "Hello there, fella." Chance regarded the man with his characteristic watchfulness, neither retreating nor advancing, his posture alert, but not tense. "He's got presence," Ryan observed, rising. "Good composure. Most rescue dogs would be more reactive in a new environment, with a stranger approaching their handler." Michael felt a small surge of pride at the assessment. He's different. Ryan nodded. So I've heard. Carlos says you think he might have potential as a K-9 officer, despite his background. I want to find out. If he doesn't, that's fine. But if he does... Michael hesitated. It could solve some problems for us. The housing allowance, Ryan said knowingly. Not the best reason to join the unit, but not the worst either. He gestured toward the entrance. Well, let's see what he's got. Inside, the facility was surprisingly calm compared to Michael's expectations. Several officers worked with their K-9 partners in different areas, some practicing obedience commands, others navigating obstacle courses or conducting search exercises. First things first, Ryan said, leading them to a quiet room off the main training floor. Basic temperament assessment. I need to understand his reactions to various stimuli. The next hour consisted of a series of controlled tests. Ryan introduced unexpected noises, dropped metal objects, sudden shouts, recordings of gunshots. He tested Chance's reaction to having his paws and mouth handled by a stranger. He assessed food motivation, play drive, and focus. Throughout it all, Chance remained remarkably composed. He startled at the louder noises, but recovered quickly, showing a resilience that impressed even the veteran trainer. He's got a solid foundation, Ryan admitted. Better than I expected, given what you told me about his past. So there's potential? Potential, yes. But there's a big difference between good temperament and the specific traits needed for police work. Ryan led them back to the main floor. The question is, does he have the drive and the focus? Let's try some basic search exercises. He instructed Michael to wait with Chance while he disappeared into a storage area. When he returned, he gave Michael a small pouch. This contains a training scent. Let him get familiar with it. Then we'll see if he can follow where I've laid a trail. Michael knelt beside Chance, opening the pouch and allowing him to sniff the contents. The dog's nostrils flared as he took in the scent, his eyes sharpening with interest. Good. Now give him the command to search, Ryan instructed. He doesn't know any commands yet, Michael admitted. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Just tell him what you want him to do. Let's see if he figures it out. Michael felt foolish, but complied. Chance search, he said, gesturing toward the area where Ryan had walked. Find it. For a moment, Chance simply looked at him, head tilted questioningly. Then, as if making a decision, he lowered his nose to the ground and began moving forward purposefully. Michael followed, letting the leash hang loose. Chance followed the invisible trail with increasing confidence, making each turn Ryan had taken without hesitation. When he reached a stack of equipment cases where the trainer had planted the target scent, he sat down promptly, looking back at Michael as if to say, "Here it is." Ryan's expression was difficult to read. "Has he had any training you're not telling me about?" "None," Michael assured him. "Everything he knows, he's figured out on his own." "That's unusual." Ryan crossed his arms, studying Chance with newfound respect. "Let's try something more complex." The next test involved having Chance locate Ryan when he hid in one of several rooms along a corridor. Again, the dog performed with surprising acumen, methodically checking each space until finding the trainer, then returning to Michael to lead him to the target. "He's a natural problem solver," Ryan observed. "But how is he with other dogs? That's often the breaking point for rescues, especially those with fighting backgrounds." This was the test Michael had been most concerned about. Chance had encountered other dogs during their neighborhood walks, but always at a distance, and Michael had been careful to avoid close interactions. Ryan signaled to a female officer working with a German Shepherd across the room. "Melissa, can we borrow you and Rex for a controlled meeting?" The controlled meeting began with both dogs on leashes at opposite ends of a long training mat. The German Shepherd Rex was calm and well-trained, showing mild interest in the newcomer but maintaining his professional demeanor. Chance's body language shifted subtly as he observed the other dog. His ears moved forward with interest, but there was no aggression in his posture. If anything, he seemed to be studying Rex, noting how the shepherd interacted with his handler. "Bring him forward slowly," Ryan instructed Michael. "Watch for any signs of tension, raised hackles, stiffened tail, fixed stare." Step by step, they moved closer. At 10 feet apart, they paused. Rex remained calm, but Chance had gone very still, his focus intensifying. Michael felt the leash tighten slightly as Chance's body tensed. "Should we stop?" "Wait," Ryan said. "He's not showing aggression, he's processing." Indeed, after several seconds of assessment, Chance's posture relaxed slightly. He glanced up at Michael, then back at Rex, as if seeking confirmation that this interaction was acceptable. "Remarkable," Melissa commented. "Most dogs with his background would have shown some reactivity by now." They continued the approach until the dogs were just a few feet apart. Rex, following his training, remained in a sitting position. Chance, without prompting, mirrored the posture, sitting calmly while maintaining eye contact with the shepherd. "I've never seen anything quite like it," Ryan said quietly. "It's almost as if he's consciously choosing to follow Rex's example." The final test came when Ryan instructed Melissa to have Rex approach Chance directly for a controlled greeting. The shepherd moved forward with confidence, sniffing Chance's face and neck in the typical canine introduction. Chance allowed this with dignity, neither cowering nor challenging, though Michael could sense his discomfort at having his personal space invaded. After a moment, Rex backed away, apparently satisfied, and returned to Melissa's side. "Well," Ryan said, turning to Michael, "I think we have something to work with here. He's got natural abilities I rarely see even in purpose-bred police dogs. His problem-solving skills are exceptional, and his composed reaction to another male dog is frankly astonishing given his history." Michael felt a surge of hope. "So you think he could qualify for the program?" "There would be challenges," Ryan cautioned. "His age, for one. Most canines begin training as puppies. His physical limitations from old injuries. The bureaucratic hurdle of having a rescue approved instead of a purpose-bred dog." He paused. "But yes, I think it's worth pursuing. With the right training, he could be something special." On the drive home, Michael called Allison to share the news. "Ryan thinks he has real potential," he told her, glancing at Chance in the rearview mirror. "He's going to speak with the department administrators about making an exception to their usual requirements." "That's incredible, Michael. But are you sure this is what you want? Being a K9 handler means more risk, more responsibility." "I know, but seeing him today, Ali, the way he approached those tests, the focus he showed, it was like watching him come alive with purpose." Michael paused. "I think he needs this as much as we do." When they arrived home, Chance did something unprecedented. As soon as Michael opened the apartment door, the dog walked directly to Allison, who was reading on the couch, and placed his head gently on her knee. It was the first time he had initiated contact with either of them without prompting. Allison looked up, surprised, then cautiously placed her hand on his head. "Well, hello to you too. I hear you were quite impressive today." Chance's eyes held hers with that same intelligent steadiness Michael had noticed from the beginning. "I think," Allison said slowly, "he's trying to tell us he's on board with this plan." Michael smiled, watching the interaction with a feeling approaching wonder. "I think you might be right." Later that evening, as they prepared for bed, Michael found himself considering the strange path that had led them here. Just weeks ago, Chance had been an abused, discarded animal on the brink of euthanasia. Now he was being considered for a position of service and honor, one that could transform his traumatic past into something purposeful and healing. "From unwanted to irreplaceable," he murmured, as Chance settled onto his blankets for the night. his watchful gaze finally softening as sleep approached. Quite a journey, buddy. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of paperwork, evaluations, and preliminary training sessions. Ryan had convinced his superiors to give Chance a probationary opportunity, a rare exception to department protocol that spoke volumes about the dog's exceptional potential. It wasn't easy, Ryan admitted to Michael during one of their early sessions, but once Chief Williams observed Chance's assessment videos, he became interested, said he'd never seen such focus in a rescue before. Today marked their first official day of formal training. Michael had taken a temporary reassignment from patrol to the K9 unit, which meant a significant pay cut until they completed certification. It was a financial strain, but the department's housing allowance had already been approved, allowing them to begin searching for a suitable place that would accommodate their unique family. Remember, Ryan instructed as they prepared for the day's exercises, at this stage, you're learning as much as he is. The bond between handler and K9 is what makes or breaks the team. Michael nodded, adjusting the new training harness that marked Chance's provisional status. The dog sat patiently beside him, already appearing more confident in this role than Michael felt himself. We'll focus on basic obedience commands today, establishing the communication framework. Ryan handed Michael a training pouch filled with small treats. Normally, we'd have started this when he was much younger, but Chance has shown he's a quick study. The morning consisted of simple command work: sit, stay, come, heel. While Chance had already figured out many of these behaviors on his own, formalizing them with specific verbal and hand signals was essential for field work. Good, now give him the down command, Ryan instructed. Michael made the appropriate hand gesture while clearly stating, Chance down. The dog looked at him, head tilted questioningly, but remained sitting. He's not getting it, Michael frowned. Ryan observed quietly. Try again. Sometimes it takes repetition. Michael repeated the command, this time adding gentle pressure on Chance's shoulders. The dog resisted, his body stiffening. Stop, Ryan said suddenly. Look at his reaction. He's not being stubborn. He's uncomfortable. Michael immediately released the pressure, concerned. Is he in pain? His shoulder? I don't think it's physical, Ryan said thoughtfully. Try a different command, then come back to this one. They moved on to recall exercises which Chance performed flawlessly, returning to Michael's side with precision each time Ryan had him hold the dog while Michael moved to various distances. After several successful repetitions, Ryan suggested they try the down command again. But this time, watch him carefully. Look for any change in his expression when you give the command. Michael did as instructed, and this time he caught it. A barely perceptible flinch when he said the word down, followed by a tension in Chance's body that hadn't been there moments before. The command itself is triggering something, Michael realized. Ryan nodded. Fighting dogs are often trained to go down before a fight, or punished in that position. He considered for a moment. Let's try a different word. Something that won't have negative associations. After some thought, Michael opted for rest. He demonstrated the position himself, then encouraged Chance with gentle guidance rather than pressure. It took several attempts, but eventually the dog cautiously lowered himself to the ground, eyes never leaving Michael's face. Good boy, Michael praised, immediately rewarding him with a treat and affection. Perfect rest, Chance. The transformation was remarkable. Within an hour, Chance had mastered the new command, performing it with the same confidence he showed with the others. That's what makes a good handler, Ryan commented as they took a water break. Reading your partner, understanding what they're trying to tell you. Most guys would have just forced the issue, thinking the dog was being disobedient. I could feel his discomfort, Michael said, watching as Chance investigated a nearby training apparatus with curiosity. It was like He wanted to comply, but something was blocking him. Ryan nodded. Dogs carry their histories with them just like people do. The difference is, they can't tell us with words. We have to learn their language. He checked his watch. Let's work on some search basics, then call it a day. You're both doing well, but I don't want to overtax him while he's still building strength. By late afternoon, Michael was driving home, Chance resting more comfortably in the back seat than he had after previous training sessions. The day had been enlightening, challenging, and strangely fulfilling in a way his regular police work hadn't been for some time. You did great today, buddy, he told Chance, who perked up at the sound of his voice. We're going to make this work. When they arrived home, Allison was waiting with news of her own. I think I found it, she announced as soon as they walked through the door. The perfect place. She knelt to greet Chance, who had begun approaching her more frequently since that breakthrough evening. How was our brave police dog today? He was amazing, Michael said, dropping his keys on the counter. What's this about a perfect place? Allison pulled out her tablet, opening a real estate listing. 3-bedroom house in Bay Ridge, fenced yard, near the express bus route for my commute, and get this, the owner is a retired NYPD detective. When I mentioned you were in K-9 training, he seemed really interested. Michael scrolled through the photos. The house was modest but well-maintained, with a decent-sized yard that would give Chance proper space to exercise. The rent was within their budget with the housing allowance, and the location, while further from the precinct, was in a quiet neighborhood that would be ideal for a police dog's home environment. It looks perfect, he agreed. When can we see it? Tomorrow evening. I already scheduled a viewing. Allison's expression turned more serious. How are you feeling about all this? The training, the new career path? It's a lot of change in a short time. Michael considered the question carefully. Honestly, it feels right. Today in training, watching Chance work through problems, seeing how hard he tries to understand what's asked of him, it's inspiring. He smiled, remembering the breakthrough with the rest command. He's overcoming his past, not letting it define him. I respect that. Allison nodded, understanding in her eyes. You two were meant to find each other, I think. That night, they prepared a special dinner to celebrate their progress. As they ate, Michael recounted the day's training challenges and successes. Chance lay nearby, not sleeping but resting more deeply than he usually allowed himself, as if the purposeful exertion had satisfied something essential within him. Ryan says he has the potential to be a specialty dog, Michael explained between bites. Most canines are trained as general patrol dogs, but some develop specific aptitudes: narcotics detection, search and rescue, cadaver location. Any idea what Chance might excel at? It's early, but Ryan noticed his focus during the scent tracking exercises. Said he has a natural precision that could make him valuable for detection work. Michael paused. But there's something else. Something Ryan couldn't quite put his finger on. The way Chance reads situations, assesses people. It's extraordinary. Allison watched as Chance lifted his head, eyes finding Michael's at the mention of his name. He understands so much, she said softly. Sometimes I catch him watching us when we're talking, and I swear he's following the conversation. I know, it's almost... A sudden knock at the door interrupted them. Chance was immediately alert, rising to his feet with focused attention but no aggression. Michael approached the door cautiously. Unexpected visitors were rare in their building. Through the peephole, he saw 2 uniformed officers from his precinct. He opened the door, instantly concerned. Martinez, Jackson, what's going on? Carlos Martinez's expression was grave. Mike, we need to talk, privately. Chance had moved to position himself slightly ahead of Michael, his posture alert but controlled as he assessed the visitors. "It's okay, Chance," Michael reassured him, motioning the officers inside. "These are friends." The dog backed up slightly, but remained vigilant, his eyes tracking every movement as the officers entered. "Smart dog," Officer Jackson commented, keeping a respectful distance. "What's happened?" Michael asked, sensing bad news. Martinez and Jackson exchanged glances. "It's about your application to the K-9 unit," Martinez finally said. "Someone's trying to block it. Filed a formal complaint about putting a former fighting dog in a position of authority." "What? Who would—" "Mendoza," Jackson said flatly. "Animal control officer who works with the department. Says he remembers the call about a fighting dog at that warehouse the night you found Chance. Claims it's departmental negligence to train him as a K-9. Michael felt a cold anger building. Chance was never officially classified as a fighting dog, and his evaluations— "We know," Martinez interrupted. "That's why we're here, to warn you. Mendoza's got friends on the force and he's pushing for Chance to be classified as a dangerous animal. If that happens—" He didn't need to finish. If Chance were officially designated as dangerous, not only would his K-9 training end, but he could face euthanasia, the very fate Michael had rescued him from in the first place. Allison had joined them, her face pale. "They can't do that, not after all this progress." "They're going to try," Jackson said grimly. "Hearing set for next week, administrative review." As the officer spoke, Chance remained perfectly positioned between them and his family, his intelligent eyes taking in the tension and seriousness of the conversation. It was as if he understood exactly what was at stake. His future, perhaps his very life, hanging once again in the balance. The small conference room at the precinct buzzed with urgent energy as Michael, Ryan, and Martinez huddled around a stack of paperwork. 4 days had passed since the bombshell announcement, and they were building their defense against Mendoza's petition. "His argument hinges on the initial incident report," Ryan explained, highlighting a section of text. "The responding officer, that was you, Mike, noted suspected fighting dog in the description." Michael ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Because that's the standard terminology for a dog with those kinds of injuries. It doesn't mean he was actually fighting." "Mendoza's twisting it," Martinez agreed, "making it sound like you knowingly removed a dangerous animal from the scene. He's also claiming you circumvented proper channels by taking him to a private vet instead of animal control. Because animal control would have euthanized him on the spot." Michael's voice rose enough to draw glances from officers passing in the hallway. He lowered it with effort. "Sorry, this just feels personal." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "It might be. You ever crossed paths with Mendoza before?" Michael started to shake his head, then paused, a memory surfacing. "Wait. About a year ago there was a case, suspected dogfighting ring in Red Hook. I was first on scene, called it in. Mendoza was the AC officer who responded." He frowned, trying to recall the details. "We disagreed about the handling of the evidence. I thought he was being too cavalier with the scene preservation. You filed a complaint," Martinez remembered. "Department sustained it. Mendoza got a reprimand." Ryan let out a low whistle. "So this is revenge. He's using Chance to get back at you." "Using bureaucracy as a weapon," Michael muttered, disgust evident in his tone. "What do we have in our favor?" Ryan sorted through another pile of documents. "Plenty. Dr. Patel's medical evaluations and behavioral assessments, my training reports, testimony from Melissa and other K-9 officers who've observed Chance's interactions with their dogs." He held up a hefty folder. "Plus case studies of other former fighting dogs who've been successfully rehabilitated into service roles." "Will it be enough?" "It should be, especially with Chief Williams in your corner." Ryan hesitated. But Mike, you need to prepare yourself. These hearings can get ugly. Mendoza will try to paint you as an officer who let personal feelings cloud professional judgment, who put the department at risk by advocating for a dangerous animal. Michael nodded grimly. I can handle whatever he throws at me. I'm just worried about what happens to Chance if we lose. The unspoken possibility hung heavily in the air. If Chance were officially classified as dangerous, the options would be limited: permanent confinement, transfer to a sanctuary if one would take him, or most likely, euthanasia. We won't let it come to that, Martinez promised, clapping a hand on Michael's shoulder. That evening, Michael and Allison visited the house in Bay Ridge for the second time. The retired detective who owned it, Frank Sullivan, had taken an immediate liking to Chance during their first viewing. Today, he'd invited them back to discuss the lease details. So, this business with the hearing, Sullivan said as they sat in his cluttered living room, Chance lying calmly at Michael's feet. Sounds like bureaucratic nonsense to me. Michael was surprised. You heard about that? Sullivan snorted. 27 years on the force, still got friends in every precinct. Word travels. He studied Chance with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades reading people and situations. That dog's no more dangerous than my grandson's Labradoodle. Probably a damn sight smarter, too. He is, Allison agreed. But we're worried the hearing might not go our way, and if it doesn't... Sullivan waved a hand dismissively. That's why I wanted to talk to you today. House is yours regardless, K-9 officer or not. He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. And between us, if things go south, I know people at sanctuaries upstate. Places that take special cases off the books. No city officials getting their hands on him. The offer of help, from a near stranger no less, left Michael momentarily speechless. That's incredibly generous, Allison said, filling the silence. But we're hoping it won't come to that. Course not, just letting you know there's always options. Sullivan turned his attention back to Chance. Mind if I say hello to him? Not at all, Michael replied. Chance, greet. It was one of the social commands they'd been practicing. Permission to approach a friendly person. Chance rose with dignity and walked to Sullivan, allowing the older man to gently pat his head. Good judge of character, aren't you? Sullivan murmured to the dog. Had a partner like that once. K-9 named Rex, not as handsome as you, but he could smell a lie from across the room. He looked up at Michael. Your boy here has got the same look in his eyes, the kind that sees right through people. Later, as they drove home with a signed lease in hand, Michael felt a complex mixture of emotions: gratitude for Sullivan's support, anxiety about the upcoming hearing, and beneath it all, a deepening certainty that Chance was meant for something significant. The dog had changed their lives in mere weeks, and now, without even trying, he was building a community of allies around himself. I called in a favor, Allison said, interrupting his thoughts. My friend Emma from med school. She's a veterinary behaviorist now, specializes in rehabilitation of traumatized animals. She's agreed to evaluate Chance and testify at the hearing if needed. Michael reached across the console to squeeze her hand. That's brilliant. Thank you. He's family now, she said simply. We fight for family. The day before the hearing, Michael took Chance to the K-9 training center for what might be their final session together. Ryan had suggested they continue as normal, both to maintain Chance's routine and to gather more evidence of his training progress. They were working on scent detection, using training aids to help Chance identify specific odors and alert when he found them. He had shown particular aptitude for this work, demonstrating a precision that impressed even the veteran trainers. Let's try something more challenging, Ryan suggested after Chance had successfully located every training aid in the basic course. Melissa, can we borrow your bag? Officer Melissa Chen, who had become one of their strongest supporters, handed over her gym bag. Ryan took it to a separate room, then returned empty-handed. "I've hidden her bag somewhere in the east corridor. It contains her personal items, clothes, shoes, water bottle. Nothing Chance has been specifically trained to find." He turned to Michael. "Let's see if he can locate it using just her scent signature as a reference." It was an advanced exercise, typically not introduced until much later in training. Michael looked at Chance, who sat attentively waiting for instructions. "Okay, buddy, let's try something new." He led Chance to Melissa, who allowed the dog to sniff her hand. "Find it, Chance. Find Melissa's things." Chance's demeanor shifted instantly into work mode. He began a methodical sweep of the corridor, nose working constantly, body language focused and intent. At the third door, he stopped, looking back at Michael with clear purpose. "Is it in there?" Michael asked Ryan. "No, it's further down." Chance, however, remained fixed at the door, then scratched at it lightly, the alert signal they'd been training. Ryan frowned. "That's odd. Let's see what he's alerting on." Inside the room, a rarely used storage space, they found nothing obviously connected to Melissa. Ryan was about to suggest they continue the exercise when Chance led them directly to a shelf in the corner. There, partially hidden behind some equipment, was a woman's jacket. Melissa's eyes widened. "That's my old jacket. I thought I'd lost it months ago after training in the rain. I must have left it here to dry and forgotten about it." Ryan looked from the jacket to Chance, then back to Michael. "He didn't just find what we asked for. He found something with her scent that even she had forgotten was here." "Is that significant?" Michael asked. "Significant? It's exceptional. Most detection dogs follow specific training protocols. They find what they've been explicitly trained to alert on." Chance made a logical leap. He understood the concept behind the search, not just the mechanics of it. Ryan shook his head in amazement. And he did it in his first attempt. After locating the planted gym bag with equal efficiency, they ended the session on this high note. As they were preparing to leave, Chief Williams arrived, his imposing presence commanding immediate attention. "Officer Reeves, I was hoping to catch you." His eyes went to Chance, who returned his gaze with steady composure. "Wanted to wish you luck tomorrow. Ryan's kept me informed of your progress." "Thank you, sir." Williams crouched down to Chance's level, a surprisingly humble gesture from a man known for his authoritative demeanor. "Remarkable animal you've got here. Be ashamed to lose him over departmental politics." "Do you think Mendoza has a strong case?" Michael dared to ask. The chief straightened up. "On paper, maybe. But this isn't just about paperwork. It's about whether we're a department that makes decisions based on fear and prejudice or on evidence and merit." He fixed Michael with a meaningful look. "I'll be attending the hearing personally. Don't often do that for probationary K-9 issues." It was a clear message of support, as close as the politically careful chief could come to promising his advocacy. As Michael drove home with Chance, the setting sun painted Brooklyn's skyline in hues of orange and gold. Tomorrow would determine their future, not just Chance's career as a K-9, but potentially his very life. The weight of that responsibility settled heavily on Michael's shoulders. "Whatever happens," he promised the dog, watching him from the back seat, "we face it together. You're not alone anymore." Chance's steady gaze seemed to say he understood both the gravity of their situation and the promise being made. In the morning, they would stand before those who sought to judge Chance based on his past rather than his present. But tonight they would go home to Allison and the certainty of belonging they had built together. The administrative hearing room felt unnecessarily formal, with its wood-paneled walls and elevated bench where Captain Harriet Thornton, the department's administrative judge, would preside. The space, normally used for disciplinary hearings and procedural reviews, seemed ill-suited for determining the fate of a dog whose only crime was surviving. Michael sat rigidly in his chair, Chance lying calmly at his feet. Ryan and Dr. Patel flanked him on one side, Allison and her friend Emma, the veterinary behaviorist, on the other. Across the aisle, Officer Mendoza sat with two representatives from Animal Control and the department's safety compliance officer. The room was unusually full for an administrative hearing. Word had spread through the precinct, and officers from various departments, many who had never even met Chance, had shown up in a quiet show of support. In the back row, Sullivan sat with his arms crossed, looking more like an intimidating detective than a retired landlord. Captain Thornton entered, and everyone rose. "Be seated," she instructed, adjusting her reading glasses as she settled behind the bench. "Let's make one thing clear from the outset. This is not a trial. This is an administrative review to determine whether the animal known as Chance meets the criteria for designation as a dangerous dog under city ordinance, and consequently, whether his acceptance into the K9 training program constitutes a departmental liability." She looked directly at Michael. "Officer Reeves, I understand you're currently serving as the animal's handler and have petitioned for permanent K9 partnership status. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am." "And Officer Mendoza, you filed an objection based on the animal's suspected history and behavioral concerns?" Mendoza stood. "That's correct, Captain. As the animal control officer who would have processed this dog had proper procedures been followed, I have serious concerns about public safety and departmental liability." Captain Thornton nodded. "I'll hear from both sides, beginning with Officer Mendoza's petition." Mendoza approached a small podium, handling his prepared remarks with practiced efficiency. "Captain, I draw your attention to the incident report filed on April 17th, when Officer Reeves responded to a disturbance call at an abandoned warehouse in Gowanus. The report clearly identifies a suspected fighting dog on premises." He continued, detailing what he characterized as Michael's deliberate circumvention of standard procedures by taking Chance to a private veterinarian rather than animal control. His argument built methodically to his central claim, that Michael had allowed personal feelings to override professional judgment, putting both the department and the public at risk. "The physical evidence is irrefutable," Mendoza concluded, displaying photos of Chance taken the night Michael found him. "These scars, these injuries, they're the unmistakable marks of a fighting dog. And while Officer Reeves's compassion is admirable, it doesn't change what this animal was bred and trained to do. Dogs with this history are unpredictable. Their rehabilitation success rates are statistically low, and the potential consequences of failure in this case, a weaponized fighting dog with the authority of this department behind him, are simply unacceptable." Michael clenched his jaw, fighting to maintain his composure. The clinical detachment with which Mendoza reduced Chance to nothing more than the sum of his scars felt like a personal attack. "Thank you, Officer Mendoza," Captain Thornton said without inflection. "Officer Reeves, your response?" Michael stood, conscious of Chance rising with him, maintaining perfect heel position without being commanded. It was a small detail, but he noticed Captain Thornton's eyes tracking the movement. "Captain, I won't dispute the facts of how I found Chance or the nature of his injuries. What I contest is Officer Mendoza's interpretation of those facts and his conclusions about Chance's temperament and potential." Michael proceeded with the argument they had carefully constructed. He acknowledged making an unorthodox decision that night, but defended it as both humane and ultimately beneficial to the department. He introduced Dr. Patel, who testified to Chance's remarkable recovery and unusual behavioral stability despite his traumatic history. Ryan spoke next, presenting detailed training records and comparative assessments that placed Chance's performance in the top percentile of K9 candidates, including purpose-bred dogs from established lines. "What we're seeing in Chance isn't just good performance," Ryan emphasized. "It's exceptional problem-solving, situational awareness, and decision-making capacity. These are precisely the qualities we seek in specialized canines. The testimony continued with Melissa describing Chance's controlled interactions with other police dogs and Emma providing expert context on rehabilitation outcomes for dogs rescued from suspected fighting environments. Throughout the proceeding, Chance remained a model of composure. Alert but calm, responsive to subtle cues, his behavior itself the most compelling evidence against Mendoza's claims. Captain Thornton listened attentively, occasionally asking pointed questions that revealed a deep familiarity with both police procedures and canine behavior. When all testimony concluded, she removed her glasses thoughtfully. "Before I make my determination, I'd like to see a demonstration of the dog's current training level. Officer Reeves, would you and Chance please approach the open area?" Michael felt a spark of hope at this unexpected request. If Captain Thornton could see Chance in action rather than just hear testimony about him, perhaps she would understand what made him special. "What would you like us to demonstrate, Captain?" Officer Ryan mentioned exceptional situational awareness. "Show me what that means in practical terms." Michael considered for a moment, then nodded. "With your permission, I'd like to simulate an officer safety scenario." At Captain Thornton's approval, Ryan quickly arranged a simple scenario. Martinez volunteered to play the role of a suspect with several other officers positioned throughout the room as bystanders. The setup was basic. Martinez would conceal a training weapon and, at some point during a casual interaction, make a threatening move toward Michael. "Chance hasn't been specifically trained for protection work yet," Michael explained to the room. "This will test his natural instincts and judgment." The simulation began with Michael and Chance approaching Martinez, engaging in casual conversation. The other bystanders moved naturally around the room, creating distractions. Martinez kept his hands visible, showing no obvious threat signals. Then, with practiced smoothness, Martinez reached behind his back and pulled the training weapon, advancing toward Michael in a single fluid motion. What happened next left the room in stunned silence. Before Michael could even register the threat, Chance had positioned himself between Martinez and his handler. But unlike a typical protection dog who might bark aggressively or attempt to engage the threat directly, Chance simply stood his ground, a physical barrier of focused intention. He made no sound, showed no teeth, yet his presence was unmistakably authoritative. Martinez froze, the training weapon still extended. "I've never seen that response before," he admitted. "Most dogs would either attack or retreat." Ryan approached slowly, nodding in approval. He's containing the threat without escalating it, creating space and time for his handler to respond appropriately. He turned to Captain Thornton. "This is what I meant by exceptional judgment. He's not reacting from aggression or fear. He's making tactical decisions." Captain Thornton's expression remained neutral, but Michael caught a flash of interest in her eyes. "Officer Reeves, would you say this response is typical of Chance?" "Yes, Captain. From the first night I found him, he's shown this ability to assess situations and respond proportionally. He's never overreacted, never escalated beyond what's necessary." She nodded slowly. "I've seen enough. Please return to your seats while I consider my determination." The next few minutes stretched interminably as Captain Thornton reviewed her notes, occasionally glancing at Chance, who had resumed his quiet vigilance at Michael's feet. Finally, she looked up. "Based on the testimony presented and my own observations, I find insufficient evidence to classify the dog known as Chance as dangerous under City Ordinance, Section 17-342. She directed a pointed look at Mendoza. "On the contrary, the evidence suggests exceptional stability and control, particularly given the animal's suspected background." Michael felt a wave of relief so intense it left him momentarily lightheaded. However, Captain Thornton continued, I recognize the legitimate concerns regarding departmental liability. Therefore, I am placing the following conditions on Chance's continued participation in the K-9 program. She outlined a series of additional evaluations, extended probationary periods, and specialized training requirements, all stringent but reasonable precautions that acknowledged both Chance's potential and the unique circumstances of his case. Officer Mendoza, she concluded, while I appreciate your attention to procedural compliance, I remind you that our policies exist to serve our mission, not to obstruct initiative and compassion when circumstances warrant flexibility. This department is better for having officers who recognize potential where others see only liability. The dismissal in her tone was unmistakable. Mendoza gathered his materials, his expression tightly controlled as he left without further comment. As the room gradually emptied, congratulations flowing from all sides, Michael knelt beside Chance, meeting those steady eyes that had captivated him from the beginning. We did it, buddy, he whispered. You're officially part of the team now. Chance's tail swept once across the floor, a gesture of quiet dignity that somehow conveyed more than effusive celebration ever could. It was the acknowledgement of a hurdle overcome, a step forward on a path they would continue to walk together. 6 months after the hearing, life had settled into a new normal. The modest house in Bay Ridge had become home, its fenced yard offering Chance the freedom he'd never known before. Michael and Allison had painted the walls, arranged furniture, and slowly transformed the space into their own. Even Sullivan became a regular visitor, often bringing treats for Chance that he insisted were police dog approved. The K-9 training was progressing better than anyone had anticipated. Chance had completed the basic certification course in record time, mastering standard patrol dog skills with an efficiency that impressed even the most skeptical trainers. Ryan had then guided them toward specialization in detection work, where Chance's extraordinary scent discrimination abilities could be fully utilized. Today marked a significant milestone, their first operational deployment as a certified K-9 team. They were supporting a multi-agency task force investigating a series of storage unit burglaries across Brooklyn. The thief had been methodical, leaving minimal evidence, but authorities believed stolen merchandise was being moved through a particular facility in Sunset Park. Remember, Ryan advised as they prepared near the command post, this is different from training. More distractions, more pressure. Trust your partner, but also protect him. Chance will follow your lead. Michael nodded, checking Chance's specialized search harness one final time. The dog stood patiently, his focus already sharpening as he sensed the shift toward work mode. The task force commander, a veteran FBI agent named Diana Wells, approached. Officer Reeves, I understand this is your team's first field deployment? Yes, ma'am, but we're ready. Wells studied Chance with professional assessment. Ryan speaks highly of your dog's capabilities. We're looking for evidence of recent human presence in supposedly vacant units. Standard search pattern, nothing fancy. Understood. Wells led them to the facility manager's office, where blueprints of the complex were spread across a desk. We've narrowed our search to this section, she explained, indicating a block of units. Intelligence suggests our suspect accessed these units within the last 48 hours. We need to confirm which ones. The search began methodically. Facility staff unlocked each unit, allowing Michael and Chance to work without damaging property. The first few searches yielded nothing noteworthy, just the musty smell of forgotten possessions and dust. In the fourth unit, Chance's behavior subtly changed. His search pattern became more focused, his attention drawn to a stack of cardboard boxes in the corner. He's got something, Michael informed Wells, who observed from the doorway. Chance circled the boxes, then sat, his trained alert for a confirmed target odor. Unit investigators moved in, carefully dismantling the stack. Inside one box, beneath layers of packing material, they found a jacket containing the facility security guard's ID badge. "Interesting," Wells murmured. "This unit is registered to a Karen Miller from Queens. Why would she have the security guard's jacket?" Further investigation revealed the security guard, James Calloway, had no legitimate explanation for his badge being in a customer's unit. Under questioning, he eventually admitted to providing access codes to his cousin, the suspected thief, in exchange for a cut of the profits. "Good work," Wells told Michael as they continued to the next section. "Your dog just broke our case wide open." They proceeded through several more units without significant findings, though Chance maintained his focused intensity throughout the long afternoon. His stamina impressed the task force members, several of whom had worked with K-9 teams before. Near the end of their assigned section, they approached Unit 227. Nothing about it appeared different from the dozens they'd already searched. Standard padlock, no visible tampering. Yet as they approached, Chance's demeanor transformed dramatically. He stiffened, hackles slightly raised, and positioned himself in front of Michael. "What's he alerting on?" Wells asked, noticing the change. "That's not an alert," Michael replied, instantly concerned. "That's a warning. Something's wrong." He signaled for the team to halt, trusting Chance's judgment implicitly. "Can we verify if this unit should be vacant?" A quick check with the facility manager confirmed Unit 227 was indeed rented but should be unoccupied. The renter was supposedly on vacation abroad. "Chance is indicating a potential threat," Michael explained to Wells. "I recommend tactical entry rather than standard search procedure." Wells considered this for only a moment before nodding. "Taylor, Peterson, full tactical gear, everyone else establish perimeter." The shift to tactical operations was swift and professional. Michael and Chance withdrew to a safe distance while the specialized entry team prepared. Within minutes, they breached the unit's lock with minimal noise. "NYPD, FBI, come out with your hands visible." The standard commands echoed through the facility corridors. Instead of compliance, they heard frantic movement inside, followed by the unmistakable sound of a weapon being chambered. "Gun!" one officer shouted, just as a shot rang out from within the unit, embedding in the metal door frame inches from the entry team. What followed was textbook crisis response, officers taking cover, calling for backup, establishing communication protocols. The standoff lasted nearly 20 minutes before the suspect, cornered and outgunned, finally surrendered. He was not the thief they'd been seeking, but a different criminal entirely. A fugitive wanted for armed robbery in New Jersey, hiding out in the storage facility. In his unit, authorities found weapons, stolen identification documents, and evidence linking him to several additional crimes. "If you'd entered that unit using standard search protocols, we could have had officers down," Wells told Michael afterward, her typically stoic expression showing genuine appreciation. "Your dog sensed what none of our human intelligence suggested. That's exceptional work." Back at the precinct, Ryan was waiting for their debrief, eager to hear how Chance had performed in the field. "Better than we could have hoped," Michael replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. He not only found evidence that broke the original case, but detected an armed suspect that wasn't even on our radar. "The situational awareness we saw in his evaluation," Ryan nodded. "It's not something you can train, it's intuitive. He reads environments, processes information, makes connections." He scratched behind Chance's ears affectionately. "You've got yourself a once-in-a-career partner there, Mike." That evening, they celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. Allison had prepared Chance's favorite meal, a special blend of rice, lean protein, and vegetables that Dr. Patel had recommended for his continued recovery and optimal working condition. "To Chance," Allison toasted, raising her glass, "official hero dog of Brooklyn." Michael laughed but clinked his glass against hers. "He was pretty incredible today. You should have seen the FBI agents' faces when he alerted on that armed suspect. One of them actually asked if he was telepathic. Maybe he is, in his way. Allison watched as Chance methodically consumed his dinner, still maintaining the deliberate eating habits he'd developed during his recovery. He understands so much more than most people give animals credit for. Later, as they relaxed in the living room, Michael's phone rang, Chief Williams himself, calling to commend them on a successful first deployment. "Agent Wells speaks very highly of your team's performance," the chief said. "She specifically mentioned Chance's ability to differentiate between evidence and active threat, said she's never seen that level of discernment in a working dog before." "Thank you, sir. He exceeded expectations." "This is exactly why I supported your petition, Reeves. Dogs like Chance, with the right handler, they change the game." There was a pause. "The department's K9 demonstration at next month's community relations event. I want you and Chance to be featured. Show the public what this partnership can accomplish." After hanging up, Michael relayed the news to Allison. "A public demonstration. That's a big vote of confidence," she smiled. "From unwanted street dog to NYPD poster boy in less than a year. Quite the transformation." Chance, lying comfortably on his bed near the couch, lifted his head at the continued mention of his name. His gaze moved between them with that characteristic intelligence that still sometimes caught Michael off guard. "What do you think, buddy? Ready to show Brooklyn what you can do?" In response, Chance rose and approached Michael, resting his head on his handler's knee, a gesture of quiet affirmation that had become his signature way of communicating trust and partnership. As Michael gently stroked the dog's head, he marveled at how far they'd come from that rain-soaked night in the warehouse. The scars that had once defined Chance were still visible, permanent reminders of his past, but they no longer told his whole story. Now they were just one chapter in a narrative that grew richer and more remarkable with each passing day. "You know," Allison observed softly, "I think Sullivan was right that first day. Chance doesn't just see things, he sees through things. Past appearances, past assumptions." Michael nodded, meeting Chance's steady gaze. "Maybe that's what drew us together from the beginning. We both know that what others see isn't always the whole truth." Outside, Brooklyn continued its endless rhythm, unaware that one of its once discarded souls had found not just salvation, but purpose, transforming from a victim of cruelty to a guardian of the very community that had once rejected him. The community relations event transformed Prospect Park into a showcase of Brooklyn's finest. Various police units had set up demonstrations and information booths across the central lawn. Mounted police with their magnificent horses, the underwater recovery team displaying their specialized equipment, tactical officers explaining their role in crisis situations. But the K9 demonstration area drew the largest crowd by far. People of all ages gathered around the cordon section where police dogs displayed their training in narcotics detection, suspect apprehension, and agility courses. Michael and Chance were scheduled as the final presentation. As they waited in the preparation area, Ryan made last-minute adjustments to their demonstration plan. "Chief Williams invited some special guests today," he informed Michael. "City council members, community leaders, even a state senator. The department's using this as an opportunity to highlight innovative programs." "No pressure," Michael muttered, adjusting his formal uniform. Ryan smiled. "Just do what you've been doing. Chance will handle the rest." Indeed, Chance seemed remarkably composed for a dog about to perform before hundreds of spectators. He sat at perfect attention, his specialized demonstration harness gleaming in the autumn sunlight, eyes alert but calm. Their moment arrived with Chief Williams' introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen, our final demonstration today represents a unique partnership within our K9 unit. Officer Michael Reeves and his partner Chance will show you some of the specialized detection and assessment capabilities that make our K-9 teams invaluable assets to public safety. As they entered the demonstration area, Michael was briefly startled by the size of the crowd. He'd expected interest, but not this level of attendance. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on Chance, who moved beside him with flawless precision. Their demonstration began with basic obedience and agility exercises, Chance navigating obstacles, responding to verbal and hand commands with impeccable timing. Michael narrated throughout, explaining how these fundamental skills translated to real-world policing scenarios. They progressed to detection work, with Ryan having hidden training aids throughout the demonstration area. Chance located each one methodically, displaying the focused determination that had made him such an effective partner in the field. "What you're seeing," Michael explained to the audience, "is not just a dog finding objects. It's complex problem-solving in action. Chance is processing thousands of scent molecules, distinguishing target odors from background scents, and making decisions about what requires my attention." The crowd watched, captivated as Chance worked. Children pointed excitedly when he made successful finds, and Michael noticed even the dignified officials leaning forward with interest. For the final segment, they demonstrated Chance's unique threat assessment capabilities, the skill that had potentially saved lives during the storage facility operation. Ryan and Martinez played the roles of different individuals approaching Michael with varying degrees of concealed threat, while Chance determined appropriate responses for each scenario. Unlike traditional protection training, which often focuses on aggression and physical engagement, Michael explained, Chance has been trained to assess and respond proportionally. His goal is to de-escalate and contain threats, not to exacerbate them. The demonstration concluded with thunderous applause. As Michael and Chance took their formal position for closing remarks, Chief Williams approached with several officials in tow. "Exceptional work, Officer Reeves," the chief said, genuine appreciation evident in his tone. "I'd like you to meet Councilwoman Garcia and Senator Phillips. They're particularly interested in community-based policing initiatives." The introductions proceeded smoothly, with the officials expressing their admiration for the demonstration. What surprised Michael was their interest not just in Chance's capabilities, but in his story. Chief Williams mentioned this dog was rescued from an abusive situation, Senator Phillips inquired. "Yes, sir. Chance was found severely injured in an abandoned warehouse about 10 months ago. He was likely used in organized dogfighting." The senator crouched down, asking permission before offering his hand for Chance to sniff. "Remarkable transformation, from victim to protector." "That's exactly what I find most significant about their partnership," Councilwoman Garcia added. "It sends a powerful message about rehabilitation and second chances." She turned to Michael. "Would you and Chance consider participating in our youth intervention program? We work with at-risk teenagers, trying to show them positive alternatives to gang involvement." Before Michael could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the demonstration area. A young man had slipped past the barriers and was moving erratically toward the officials. Security personnel reacted immediately, moving to intercept him. Chance's response was instantaneous but controlled. He positioned himself between the approaching figure and the group, his posture alert but not aggressive, the same measured containment he'd demonstrated in the hearing and on real operations. The young man froze, clearly not expecting this obstacle. Security officers reached him seconds later, restraining him despite his protests that he just wanted to talk to the senator. When the situation was contained, Senator Phillips shook his head in amazement. "I've had security details for years, but I've never seen such a measured response. Your dog didn't overreact, but he didn't underreact either. That's Chance," Michael said simply. "He reads situations better than most humans." After the officials departed, promising follow-up regarding the youth program, Ryan approached with an unusual expression, somewhere between excitement and apprehension. "What's that look for?" Michael asked as they gathered their equipment. "I just got word from the chief. The demonstration was live-streamed on the department's social media channels. It's gone viral, Mike. Over 50,000 views already and climbing. People are sharing Chance's story everywhere." Michael frowned. "Is that a problem?" "Not exactly, but it's caught some national attention. I just heard from the producers of American Heroes, that documentary series about exceptional service animals. They want to feature Chance in their next season." "A documentary?" Michael wasn't sure how to feel about this unexpected development. Their work was about public service, not publicity. Ryan sensed his hesitation. "Think about it before deciding. This could be an opportunity to change perceptions about dogs like Chance, show people that backgrounds don't determine destinies." As they were discussing this, a woman approached hesitantly, holding the hand of a young boy who appeared to be around 7 years old. The child walked with the assistance of forearm crutches and had visible scarring on his exposed arms. "Excuse me, officer," the woman said. "My son Ethan was wondering if he could meet your dog. He's been watching the whole demonstration." Michael glanced at Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course. Chance is very gentle with children." He guided Chance to a sitting position and invited Ethan to approach slowly. The boy maneuvered carefully on his crutches, his eyes fixed on Chance with undisguised wonder. "He has scars like me," Ethan observed, gesturing to the visible marks on Chance's body. Michael nodded. "Yes, he does. He was hurt badly before I found him." "Is he still brave even though bad things happen to him?" The innocent question caught Michael off guard with its perceptiveness. "He's the bravest partner I've ever had," he answered honestly. "His scars are just part of his story, not the end of it." Ethan's face brightened. "That's what my doctor says about my scars too, from the fire." After receiving permission from the boy's mother, Michael guided Ethan in offering his hand to Chance. The dog sniffed gently, then leaned forward slightly, an invitation for contact that he rarely offered to strangers. Ethan carefully stroked Chance's head, his small fingers tracing the path of an old scar that ran along the dog's muzzle. "We match," he whispered, smiling. That evening, as videos of their demonstration continued spreading across social media platforms, Michael sat on the back porch of their Bay Ridge home, thinking about Ethan and all the others who had approached them after the event, each drawn not just to Chance's impressive skills, but to the resilience his scars represented. Allison joined him, handing over a mug of coffee. "Ryan called, said you've been quiet since the demonstration." "Just processing," Michael admitted. "Today was, more than I expected." "In what way?" "I thought we were just showing what Chance could do as a K9. But people connected with him on a different level." He described the interaction with Ethan. "It was like they saw themselves in him, someone who had overcome the worst and emerged stronger." Allison nodded thoughtfully. "Isn't that what drew you to him in the first place? Not just his abilities, but his spirit?" Michael considered this as Chance appeared at the door, sensing he was the topic of conversation. The dog had come so far from the emaciated, wounded animal he'd found in the warehouse. His body had healed, his confidence had grown, and his innate intelligence had found constructive purpose. Yet through it all, he had maintained that indefinable quality that had first caught Michael's attention, a dignity that transcended circumstances. "What do you think about the documentary offer?" Allison asked. "I'm not sure. Our job is protection, not publicity." "Maybe it could be both," she suggested. "Chance's story might protect others in a different way, by changing how people see dogs like him." by giving kids like Ethan someone to identify with. As if understanding the weight of the conversation, Chance rested his head on Michael's knee, his silent way of offering connection and support. "From unwanted to irreplaceable," Michael murmured, echoing his thought from months ago, "and now possibly inspirational." The night settled around them, a family forged through unexpected circumstances and unbreakable bonds. Whatever they decided about the documentary, one thing was certain. The dog that everyone had rejected had become not just a valuable K-9 officer but a symbol of something far more profound: the transformative power of being truly seen for who you are, rather than who others assume you to be. 1 year later, the documentary crew filmed their final scenes in the same warehouse where Michael had found Chance. The cavernous space had been partially renovated since then, no longer abandoned, but converted into a community center that included Brooklyn's first dedicated facility for rehabilitating rescued fighting dogs. "If you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be standing here surrounded by cameras, I wouldn't have believed you," Michael said quietly to Allison as the crew adjusted lighting for the interview segment. "If you'd told me we'd have a dog that knows more people than I do, I wouldn't have believed that either," she replied with a smile, watching as Chance patiently allowed the sound technician to adjust his microphone. The year following the viral demonstration had been extraordinary by any measure. The documentary project had expanded from a single episode to a feature-length special titled Second Chances: The Remarkable Journey of K-9 Chance. It had followed their work together, chronicling both professional achievements and the growing movement that had formed around Chance's story. Councilwoman Garcia had made good on her invitation to involve them in the youth intervention program. What began as occasional appearances evolved into a structured initiative where at-risk teenagers worked with rescued dogs under the guidance of professional trainers. Several of the program's graduates had gone on to pursue careers in animal care or law enforcement. The Chance effect, as local media had dubbed it, extended to policy changes as well. Senator Phillips had championed legislation that increased penalties for dogfighting and provided funding for specialized rehabilitation programs for the animal victims. The bill had passed with rare bipartisan support, in part because of testimony from Michael and demonstrations by Chance showing what these animals could become with proper care and opportunity. Most significantly, the Brooklyn K-9 Rehabilitation Initiative, housed in this very warehouse, had been established through a partnership between the NYPD, animal welfare organizations, and private donors. It was the first program in the country specifically designed to assess and train suitable rescue dogs for law enforcement roles. "We're ready for your final interview," called the director, gesturing Michael and Chance toward the prepared setting, a simple arrangement of chairs with the partially preserved warehouse wall as backdrop. The building's past and present symbolically merged. As they settled into position, the interviewer, a respected journalist named Elise Warren, who had been following their story from the beginning, reviewed her notes one last time. "I think we'll start with reflections on the past year, then circle back to the impact of the rehabilitation initiative, and finally end with what's next for your partnership. Sound good?" Michael nodded, adjusting his service uniform while Chance sat attentively beside him, seeming to understand the formality of the occasion. When the cameras rolled, Elise began with the question that had become central to the documentary's narrative. "What has surprised you most about this journey with Chance?" Michael considered this carefully before answering. "The ripple effects. When I found Chance that night, I was just trying to save one dog from a bad situation. I never imagined he would help create opportunities for hundreds of other dogs, or that he would touch so many human lives in the process. The program here has now successfully placed 7 rehabilitated rescue dogs with police departments across the country. What do you think makes these dogs particularly suited for law enforcement work?" "They've seen the worst of humanity, but chosen to trust again. That creates a unique perspective," Michael explained. They're vigilant without being fearful, cautious without being aggressive, and they value the bond with their handlers in a way that's profound because they understand what it means to be without one. The interview continued, covering the legislative changes, the youth program successes, and Chance's growing role as both working K9 and ambassador for change. Through it all, the dog maintained his characteristic dignity, occasionally making eye contact with Michael in a way that still conveyed their special connection. Finally, Elise turned to the personal impact. Your life has changed dramatically since that rainy night in this warehouse. New home, new career specialization, national recognition. How do you process all that? Michael glanced at Chance before answering. I've learned to see potential where others might only see damage. Chance taught me that. To look past surfaces, past assumptions, past the convenient labels we put on others. He paused, gathering his thoughts. People talk about me saving him, but the truth is, we saved each other. He gave me purpose when I was just going through the motions. And what about Chance? Elise asked, looking directly at the dog. What do you think this journey has meant for him? It was the kind of anthropomorphic question that might have made Michael uncomfortable before, but now he answered without hesitation. Security, purpose, family, the things we all need. He knows he belongs now, not just with Allison and me, but in the world. He has work that matters and people who see him for who he really is. As if affirming this assessment, Chance looked directly into the camera with that steady, intelligent gaze that had become his signature in the documentary footage, a look that seemed to communicate directly with viewers. When the interview concluded and the crew began packing up their equipment, Michael led Chance through the warehouse toward the back exit where Allison waited. They passed the rehabilitation training area where two trainers were working with a recent rescue, a nervous but hopeful-looking shepherd mix that bore the telltale scars of fighting. The dog noticed Chance and stiffened momentarily, but there was curiosity in its posture rather than fear. Chance, without prompting, slowed his pace and assumed a non-threatening position, demonstration of the same natural empathy he'd shown since the beginning. She's doing well, one of the trainers told Michael. Reminds us a lot of Chance when you first brought him to Ryan. Same watchfulness, same careful assessment before acting. Michael nodded. What's her name? Promise, the trainer replied. Seemed fitting. She represents what we're trying to do here. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Sullivan waited by his car, having driven Allison to meet them for the final filming. The retired detective had become something between a grandfather figure and a mentor to them both, and an unabashed admirer of Chance. How'd it go in there? He asked, offering Chance one of the special treats he always carried now. Good, Michael replied. Strange to think this is where it all started. Some places are like that, Sullivan observed. Pivot points where everything changes. I had a warehouse too back in '89. Drug bust gone wrong, thought I was done for. Then my K9 Rex found me when no one else could. He patted Chance's head affectionately. Full circle, seeing this place become something good. As they drove home, Sullivan insisting on treating them to dinner to celebrate the documentary's completion, Michael found himself reflecting on all that had transpired since that rainy night. His career had evolved in ways he'd never anticipated, focusing on developing rehabilitation protocols for more dogs like Chance. Allison had shifted her nursing specialty to include animal-assisted therapy, inspired by the transformations she'd witnessed. Their home had become a gathering place for an extended family of colleagues, advocates, and friends united by Chance's story. And Chance himself, once rejected, abused, discarded, had become a living embodiment of resilience and possibility. His scars remained, physical reminders of a painful past, but they no longer defined him. Instead, they served as testament to his extraordinary journey. That evening, after dinner with Sullivan, and a celebratory video call with Ryan, now heading the K-9 rehabilitation program full-time, they settled on their back porch. The documentary team had sent over a rough cut of the opening sequence, and they watched it together on a laptop. The film began with stark contrasts: footage of the abandoned warehouse on that rainy night, the medical images of Chance's injuries, the initial skepticism of shelter workers and fellow officers. Then, gradually, it showed the transformation. First successful training sessions, the pivotal hearing, their first operational deployment, the community demonstration that had gone viral. The narrative wove together professional milestones with intimate moments. Chance greeting neighborhood children during his morning walk, assisting in therapy sessions with veterans and trauma survivors, sleeping peacefully on his bed at home. The wounded fighter becoming the gentle healer, without losing any of his strength or dignity. As the preview ended, Michael looked at the dog resting contentedly between him and Allison on the porch swing. "What do you think, buddy? Did they get your good side?" Chance lifted his head with that expression of thoughtful intelligence that still amazed everyone who encountered him. Then, in a rare display of uninhibited affection, he licked Michael's hand once before settling back down. "I think that means he approves." Allison laughed softly. "Or that he's just humoring us," Michael replied, smiling. "Hard to tell with him sometimes." They sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened around them, the three souls brought together by circumstance and kept together by choice. Beyond their fence, Brooklyn continued its endless rhythm, while within their sanctuary, a once broken dog rested peacefully, secure in the knowledge that he belonged, that he mattered, that he had been truly seen. From unwanted to irreplaceable to inspirational. It wasn't just Chance's journey, it was a testament to what became possible when someone looked past the surface and saw the potential that others had missed, the silent promise waiting to be fulfilled in the eyes of a dog that everyone else had rejected.